good morning, or depending on where in the world you are, good day, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Tracy Brown, and I am welcoming you to day two of the Achieving Inclusion Summit. This summit is a multi day experience of giving you ideas and inspiration that help you achieve inclusion. And the overall theme this year is be bold. Be bold in what you are doing. Be bold in speaking up. Be bold in encouraging others. Be bold on this quest to achieve inclusion. And within that theme, we have three tracks: avoiding fatigue, confronting racism, and measuring progress. And these three tracks came to the surface by asking clients and other people I was interacting with what were some of the things that they were most concerned about. A lot of clients over the last 6 months have been turning to this idea of, are we doing the things that are important and how do we measure that? And how can we know as we revise or update our programs that we are doing things that can be measured? I had a lot of feedback in social media about confronting racism. And I think that really began to grow in 2020 to a new pitch after the murder of George Floyd. And now, after 2.5 years of paying attention to that, people are realizing, okay, but we still have work to do. So many of our employees or so many of our association members, they get it intellectually and they want to do the right thing, but they're still afraid to confront other people, to interrupt the system or to interrupt inappropriate behavior. And then with avoiding fatigue, there's just been a lot, especially on LinkedIn in the last 6 months, about burnout, both for individuals who are professionally working and practicing in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, but also just the comments about our strategy is stuck and people are kind of just tired of talking about inclusion. They think they already know everything they need to know. How can we infuse some new life, or how can we avoid getting to fatigue in the first place? So that's just a reminder, or for those of you who are just joining in here on day two, that's what the Achieving Inclusion Summit is all about. Every quarter at Intentional Inclusion, we do offer a free webinar or program. 3 of the quarters in the calendar year, it is a 90-minute webinar on a topic that has been requested by clients or audience members. But in the second quarter, we do a multi-day summit like this, where I get to talk to a variety of people about what they're doing, what they're excited about, and give tips to you. So yesterday we had some really interesting conversation with Jolene Jang about Asian American inclusion, and with Karen Fleshman about the responsibility for people who are white to engage and the benefit of that, the benefits to white people for being anti-racist or being engaged in breaking down the barriers related to racism. And today, on day two, you're going to have the opportunity. Let me make sure I get this right and actually look at my schedule and not go from memory alone. On day two, later today, I'll be visiting with Elmer Dixon and his story of being involved in community and in civil rights as a Black Panther, and now being the president of an internationally recognized inclusion consulting firm. You don't want to miss that. And I'll also have a fascinating, fabulous, and fun conversation with Kimberly Yolanda Williams. She's the author of the book, White Woman, Dear White Woman, Please Come Home. And I am so looking forward to talking with her about the book and about how to actually have conversations. I'm going to ask her, like, how does she help people have conversations across race about the impact of race and how we can break that down together. In a couple of minutes, I'm going to share some insights with you that I've learned over the years about employee resource groups. And then later today, I'll be back with some tips around the Achieving Inclusion model. How could I forget that? And the Achieving Inclusion model that I have used now for a really long time. And I just want to share that with you because it may be helpful in how you position your inclusion strategy. Now, before I go into this morning's tips, I want to invite you, if you'd like to be live in the studio with me on Friday, on day 3 of the summit, talking about real life challenges. I would love to have that happen, but you've got to let me know. So send a quick email to staff@tracybrown.com, staff@tracybrown.com, and we'll see if we have space for you to join us. And you can bring a real life challenge that you want some insight in, or you can share a real life challenge that your organization faced in the last year and the approach you took to address that challenge. Either way, I'll be answering questions that people have sent in through the summit in the Q&A or real life challenges segment, but we also have the ability to bring a few of you in live if you want to do that. So I think that's all the things I want to say as we start this day off. It is a great day. And so, yeah, let's dive into reinventing ERGs. Reinventing ERGs. That is what we are going to talk about for the next few minutes. I failed to mention, if you are joining us for the first time during the summit and you're not familiar with Tracy Brown or with Intentional Inclusion Inc., that the Intentional Inclusion Inc. is my primary brand, primary company, and we work with leaders and organizations all over the United States. About 40% of the time, we're working on inclusion strategy and how to integrate that with your mission, vision, values, industry, and business priorities. And about 40% of the time, we're actually providing training development. And then about 20% of the time, I'm speaking at conferences or doing coaching with executives around inclusion and leadership. But I also know that we have some people who are coming to the summit from programs and activities I do related to Stained Glass Spirit, which is diversity and inclusion work in spiritual communities, or from the public Facebook group, What is mine to do? Where every day we ask the question, what is mine to do to interrupt or end race based hatred and violence? But we're going to focus on reinventing ERGs. And actually, this is a multi day program that we sometimes do. And I was thinking about the question that people were asking about measuring progress because someone emailed me a few weeks ago and said that they were trying to decide what to do with their ERGs, their employee resource groups, and that in their organization, that their employee resource groups had just really um, kind of dissipated during the pandemic because people were not on site, they were not coming into the building. And now they were trying to rebuild their ERGs, but what they used to do really didn't seem like it was going to work now, and people weren't too excited about it. And so it reminded me that I used to deliver this program on reinventing ERGs, multi-day session, like perfect for a retreat for ERG leaders or diversity councils, or I used to deliver it as a multi-day online program. And so I looked at it and I was like, oh, there's some really good stuff here. So I'm going to just share some highlights and the overview of the program with you, but don't be surprised if this fall you see some information or an event invitation where I have decided to actually deliver this again, maybe once a week over 5 or 6 weeks. Um, and obviously update some of the examples and resources, but the basic content is so valuable. And I know I'm biased, of course, I would say that. But I hope in 20 minutes or so after I give you this overview that you will say, oh, yeah, those basics are really valuable. So let's dive in. With the whole idea of reinventing your ERGs, I believe there are 5 areas where you have concrete opportunities for business impact. Concrete opportunities for business impact. I could say that like 10 more times, it's so important. Concrete opportunities that support or lead to business impact. Because one of the biggest mistakes that organizations have made in the past with their employee resource groups, whether they call them business resource groups or affinity groups or ERGs, I'm going to be referring to ERGs because that seems like it's the most commonly used term. But for these affinity groups or ERGs, the biggest mistake that many organizations have made is to make them a social or a social slash networking group. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I can't think of one client I worked with, and that really was what they needed to do in their organization at that time. But even then, we were really clear that the networking that was going to come from their employee resource group was having a business impact because the challenge they were trying to resolve was having employees who needed to work together, and who needed to know each other and needed to be able to refer to each other in order to build the organization the way that they wanted to. So that also is a model that's really important in associations where the common goal is building the organization and growing a network within the organization. But even then you've got to tie it to what is the impact and the business impact for the organization or association. So I'm going to share 5 areas with you. The 5 areas may make sense to you, but I will then go into each of those a little more deeply. Now, please get on the same page with me. I am making 3 assumptions. Assumption number 1, that you already believe it's important to align your ERGs with the business priorities of your organization. Number 2, that you're looking for how to do that, not why to do that. Not, you already are there in terms of it's important. And number 3, you already know there's not a cookie cutter or cookie recipe that you can use, but instead to have an ERG strategy that really works for you, that your organization strategy is going to be unique for you, your focus, your industry, and your culture. So I'm making an assumption that you are with me on that. And that's why I'm not going to give you specific, you should do A, B, and C. I'm going to be saying you want to pay attention to A, B, and C as it relates to your company and the goals that you have. So, what are those 5 areas? The 5 areas that I want to dive into are creating the strategy, number 1, like creating the strategy intentionally, for reinventing your ERGs. And if you don't already have ERGs, but you're thinking about it, then all of these apply as well. But in my mind, I'm talking to someone who wants to take their ERGs to the next level. So creating the strategy for reinvention, managing the change from what you have now to where you're going, moving beyond events, using and applying value added skills, and recognizing progress. These are the 5 areas that I'm going to touch on just to give you an idea of what kinds of things you want to have in your thinking process and in your planning process if you are reinventing your ERG. So I'm going to try to do maybe 3 or 4 minutes on each of these 5 areas just to give you a snapshot and some food for thought. So let's look at creating the strategy. So creating the strategy is about identifying new targets. So if you already have an ERG system set up or a collection of ERGs in your organization, creating the strategy is about identifying new targets for what those ERGs are responsible for. What do you expect from them? What's the goal? And when I think about this with clients, we're usually talking about what are the business results that we want these ERGs to contribute to or to be a representation of. What are the business related projects or departments or teams or activities? And how do they relate to us having a successful outcome for the business as well as for the employees or members who are participating in that group? So please don't misunderstand me when I say what are the business outcomes and why is it good for the business. I am not ignoring that you want the employees or the members who are participating in that group to personally benefit and to personally get something out of it. But it has to be more than just social. It has to be. Otherwise, people will drop off. They will make 8 or 9 really good friends, and then they won't need the group anymore, and they'll just hang out with the 8 or 9 friends they've resonated with. And sure, people liking each other is a good thing, but you're going to invest resources of time and money to support your ERGs. And so let's make it a win-win situation. Managing the change, that's the second area. And in the second area of managing the change, in my mind, that's about the opportunity to build a bigger pie, right? So managing the change from whatever you have now to where you want to go with your ERGs. Let me remind you, we say we like change. We may even agree that change is needed. But for the majority of people, change is needed as long as everybody else has to change and not me. So if you already have ERGs and whatever they were doing in the past, that's kind of, what people expect and what others in the organization expect from them. And so you're going to be building in some new expectations, which means you have to educate people about that. And you can build a bigger pie. You can involve more people. You can, by adding different initiatives or programs, you will attract more people. I could say attract different people, but I don't mean you're trying to lose the people you have. You're just going to make the pie larger. You want to be able to invite and engage people who maybe were not attracted to whatever was happening before. And that is both people who might be members of your ERG and also people who might be allies or partners or sponsors of your ERG. So the second thing that we work with clients on with ERGs is building a bigger pie in order to make the ERGs more effective and more valuable. But in the strategy, that means we have to actually have a change management element. Number 3, moving beyond events. You want to move beyond events. And again, I said earlier, one of the things that often has happened is that ERGs got together and they hosted events. And events are great, but events should not be 80% or to 100% of what your ERG is doing. And so as you're reinventing your ERGs, I would be challenging you to look at other ways the ERG can have impact, both for people who want to be members of the ERG and people who would be served by the ERG. And how do you integrate the ERG with all the key aspects of your business? Are you using the ERG programs and activities to support your marketing and development? Are you using the ERGs in your PR and outreach efforts? Are you using the ERGs in your quality standards, the design and the sustainability of your quality or safety initiatives? Are you using the ERGs in key ways where there are business problems and you're getting input from people in your organization or the ERGs in your organization who understand your business and bring a specific aspect? How are you using your ERGs beyond simply having events? And this is, interestingly enough, it's the third element of these 5, But when using this model or this process with clients, I find we generally spend more time here than anywhere else. If it's an organization that has pretty much only used the ERG to sponsor events. So you want to take a look at that and you want to dive in a little bit. The fourth element is using, or sometimes I say applying, value added skills. So this is all about providing transferable skills or recognizing that, especially the leaders in your ERGs, they're developing and using transferable skills that are designed to ensure expansion and mobility. You want to make sure that, again, especially the leaders in your ERG, that you, if they don't already have the skills, the communication skills to build alliances in different parts of the organization, the leadership skills to engage people, to invite people, to have events happen in a way where it's not one or two people doing all the work. If they don't already have those kinds of leadership and communication and conflict resolution skills, then you want to, as an organization, provide those kinds of skills because those are skills that are transferable. So there are dozens of ERG leaders I've met along the way who ended up being promoted, having mobility in the organization, not because of the title of, event coordinator in their ERG, but because the skills they developed by serving in that role for 2 years transferred. Like they found that they loved doing events and planning with speakers, and moved from whatever area they were in the company over to the events and learning and development department to coordinate internal education. Or I'm thinking of someone who is the vice president of an ERG for, they were an officer for about 6 years in different roles. But while they were vice president of their ERG, they actually got promoted 2 levels up because in those 6 years of leadership, they had learned more about leadership than just being an individual contributor, which is what they were in their technical area of expertise. And they were able to move, and the organization was able to benefit from the fact that, oh, this person has both technical expertise and demonstrated leadership skills. And they moved that person into a leadership role that was not, again, in their original area of expertise. Because the third thing that person had learned in their 6 years of leadership, they had to interact and engage with people from all the different departments and had actually built some relationships. So a manager in a director in an area that this person did not normally work in was so impressed by this ERG leader's skills and talents that that director brought that employee over into their area, saying, they've got all the skills we need. I can teach them, right? I can teach them what they need to know about this area, but I can't teach him to be a good leader. Well, it can, but it would take a lot longer. So as an organization, you want to make sure that you are providing those skills, because if one of the things you want to do is increase mobility within your organization, then invest in the people who are leading the ERGs. And of course, there's overlap even just for what skills are the ERGs providing its members. But I especially today just want to highlight the impact it can have. If you have ERG leaders who you have invested in, and then they get sprinkled throughout your organization, you don't have to worry anymore about having champions for inclusion throughout your organization. And then the fifth category that I really want to focus on is recognizing progress. And when we talk about recognizing progress, many people focus on and will actually say, like, oh, we want to, recognize success, like who's actually completed a new project. But for me, recognizing progress is primarily focused on celebrating accomplishments along the way. So, as you are reinventing your ERG strategy or reinventing your ERGs, I cannot encourage you enough to think about many different types of recognition, right? It's a recognition to provide more visibility. It's a recognition to provide appreciation. It's recognition to look at what is being done that's innovative and then sharing that in different parts of the organization. It's recognition when you know the impact of something, even though it's not finished. And so when we're working with you on your strategies around your ERGs and recognition, we start looking at, all kinds of things like what existing award or reward programs do you have? What are things that different leaders can do that will feel like recognition and reward to the folks who are participating in your ERGs? So you don't always have to create something new. You don't have to recreate the wheel. Just use what you have. And literally, two-thirds of the things that you want to recognize as progress will not cost you any money. So when you are thinking about how do we recognize progress and how do we reward accomplishments all along the way, get out of the box. Don't just think about, oh, we need to have an annual award, an annual cash award of $1,000, or we need to highlight the top person in every ERG, or the top person in every business division, or in every state or region. And we need to bring them to an event, and we need, right? You can do all of those things. And you want to also realize that there are other ways. One organization that we worked with, I was not totally surprised, but a little surprised. I thought that if we send every member every leader in an ERG a letter from the CEO, I thought that it would be appreciated. But I was surprised by how much it was appreciated because they were personalized. Some all had a common message, and then for each ERG there were 3 bullet points that were specific to that ERG and programming that they had had in the previous 6 months. And I don't know, that got the executive team and the CEO so much benefit in trust and relationship. And all it cost was literally about an hour of time. So those are the 5 areas that I want you to keep in mind as you think about reinventing your ERGs. These are tips that I have used with clients and with organizations I have worked with in the past, and I hope that they have been really helpful for you as well. See you later today with the rest of the summit. And please share links to the summit sessions with your personal and professional network. My name is Tracy Brown, and I'll see you in a little bit.